no matter what circumstances you are, what level of the campaign you're at, when you're explaining, you're losing. Okay? If I got to explain it, you're losing. If I got to explain the joke, it's not funny. If I explain a policy, I'm losing. And second, as I'm always quick to say with my students, these polls ain't loyal. They can always be moved, right? Your behavior can change the polling, but when you act the same way and you act that way consistently, they're going to be stuck. And you get to a point where no matter what you say, no matter what you do, people are going to say, you know what, you're not on my side. You're not in favor of me. You're not going to help me one way or another. And every single time Donald Trump gets on television and acts like what's happening ain't happening, every time he gets on the air and says the economy is fine and people are like, hey, oh my gosh, my gas is expensive. And I like that you mentioned earlier, I have mentioned before, I saw $7 gas last week.
My gas was $6.39.
$7.19 for gas an hour north of Los Angeles about a week and a half ago. I was floored. It wasn't in the city. It was north of the city.
Was that premium or regular?
It was premium. But
okay,
anyway.
That's fine.
The point being, I had never seen anything that high. And when you add to that, and this is the thing, I have to mention this about the economy and the impact on business people, the impact on housing, everything else like that. The Spirit Airlines thing is not just emblematic of the dangers of the war and mismanagement and Sean Duffy's failure as transportation secretary, everything else like that. The fact that Spirit was a company that championed DEI, right, which is one of the reasons why the Trump administration was never going to offer them any sort of bailout, but also they are the airline of the small business owner. They're the airline of the plumber who takes a job out of state and needs a quick turnaround. They're the airline of college kids who are like, I just need to run home for this internship, et cetera, et cetera. You are punishing the growth economy in this country when you allow things like cheap discount airlines to go under. And that's the insensitivity of this administration as a whole.
You know, it's just so crazy because I think, first of all, we talked about it on the call, I think, this morning, but we were talking about the ceasefire, and I'm like, is it still a ceasefire if people have ceased to fire? Okay, so I just think we could call it a ceasefire if you want.
Call
but
it what you want.
Bombs things are dropping in Dubai,
yes.
okay? One of our colleagues, his parents, Eugene, he's talked about it. His parents live over there, and like, the bombs are dropping today. So let's just keep it 100. But what you just described, I think part of what people in this country are feeling right now is something that's been going on for a long time, just the chasm that exists between the wealthiest people in this country and some of the poorest people in this country, or people that wouldn't even consider themselves poor, like working poor. Middle class used to be, middle class now is like poor.
Middle class like we used to. That's been squeezed out now.
Yes, and what is happening right now is just putting just like in COVID, Vice President Harris used to say it magnified the fractures and fissures in our society. What's happening right now is putting a magnifying glass on the economic situation for millions of people in this country. And you talk about housing, but when people say affordability, they are talking about the cost at the pump, the cost at the grocery store, and the cost to live housing. That means rent. Yep. That means to be able to own. And right now, there are millions of young people, and I mean not even like middle-aged millennials and a little older millennials that can't afford to buy a house.
I'm looking at the three levels at which people are currently struggling in this economy. So first off, I got a bunch of kids who I know are graduating because I'm a college professor at Morgan State University.
Do they have jobs?
A lot of them do not. And it's not just at my institution, right? Like a lot of kids are like, hey, I guess I got to go to grad school. Can I get the extra recommendation? Because they really don't have jobs, or they have jobs that don't allow them to leave home. Then you have the second level where you get to your older millennials, you get to your Gen X people. Very few people I know, and I know a bunch of professionals, we know similar colleagues, can no longer afford to send their children to the kind of colleges that they graduated from because the costs have been going high and because the economy is so unsafe and unstable. So I don't know if I'm going to have this job in 10 years. And then you've got your retiring singles or the retiring seniors or the people who are white knuckling their jobs because they're 65, 66, 67. I can't retire because I don't know if this economy is going to be stable. And I'm paying for my granddaughter to graduate because her parents are out of work. So you've got multiple levels of suffering happening right now, and there's no plan. There is no economic plan. So even when that polling shows that it's 50-50 of Americans believing who's better with the economy, is it Republicans or Democrats, that's a general brand check issue. But as far as the practical issue of who's going to make my education more affordable and who do I think is going to pull us out of this hole, it ain't the Republican Party.
It's not. And that's why I wanted to lead in our conversation at the beginning with what the national debt has been under this president. Because Republicans for a long time have made the claim that they were, and the public reassured them that they were best on the economy, right? Every poll, that number showed
y'all had better messages.
We had better Bottom line, we had better message. I'm not going to lie about it. We did. We had better messaging despite everything that was happening real time.
Right.
But this you can't escape. When you're spending $7 billion a day to put the future generation in debt, that becomes a real crisis real quick. And as you mentioned, Simone, those three pieces where you're talking your housing, your personal economies, your ability to afford various things, all of that weighs down. So what's the turnstile look like? How does this thing turn for the American people and for the politicians? And do you see a path or a glide path where Republicans can sort of land the plane? And yes, one wheel may roll off the road, but they hold the House or they hold the Senate. Or in other words, the American people get to a point where they start to trust them again on the economy, because those numbers, to be true, they're close. It's not like, Democrats are running away on trust in the economy.
Right.
And that always seems to be the thing that flips people at the last minute.
Look, they let a whole airline die, so they ain't landing this plane, right? and so that's not going to end up happening.
Too soon, Dr. Johnson.
I walked into that one, so I hats off.
I don't see it, right? Because what do we hear Republicans talking about over the last 2.5 weeks? A ballroom, right? And redistricting. Redistricting doesn't do anything for me, right? If I am a regular voter, cutting up my representative, my state rep, my county commissioner, whatever, that does nothing for me. So they're not even beginning a conversation about how you would pull people out of the economic ditch that we're in. And I am fond of always saying, because I think sometimes messaging can be a bit overrated, I don't think the Democrats, in this one instance, you don't have to have a national message,
right,
but as long as you have strong regional messengers,
no, I
it's
think
good.
that's all they need, because this is midterm elections are district by district. This is not a national election.
Exactly.
I know we got to go, but I just thought it was so crazy that in the New York Times yesterday, they said that Pentagon officials said the war has so far cost $25 billion. The New York Times said roughly the cost of expanding Obamacare subsidies that were at the center of the extended government shutdown last year.
And they own a budget of $1.2 trillion.
I don't think the Republicans are going to get the benefit of the doubt from the American people anytime soon, because they are the reason we are in this situation.